Right, so get this picture. South Korea is a country that we all know for its vibrant democracy, and all of a sudden, bam, martial law is declared. So many people were confused and shocked when President Yoon Seok-Yeol declared it on national television. I should note that this was announced at 11 p.m. when most people were winding down. It's certainly a dramatic turn of events. The lawmakers were literally climbing walls to get into the parliament building because it was surrounded by the military. So around 11 p.m., President Yoon Seok-yeol pops up on TV and makes a surprise appearance to announce that he's taking over, citing anti-state forces and threats from North Korea. At first, people didn't even believe what was going on. They probably thought it was a joke. Now, the historical context here is really important. South Korea has a history of military coups, so even just the mention of martial law can trigger anxiety in a lot of people. The last time it was declared was in 1979, after the assassination of a military dictator, Park Chung-hee. After the assassination, people probably expected to have a better and more democratic leader, but this guy named Chun Doo-hwan became the president through a military coup, and he again declared martial law across the country. People, of course, protested, and most notably, students of Cheonam National University in Gwangju erupted into protest, and the military was sent to silence them. There's actually even a movie about this on Netflix. Within days, hundreds of civilians were killed or injured by the military, and the government tried to downplay the scale of the massacre. So, the history of martial law in Korea is scary and relatively fresh on people's minds. Now, let's back up for a second. So, what exactly does martial law even mean? For those of us who aren't super familiar with that term, let me break it down a little bit. So martial law hands over control to the military. The military gets the authority to maintain order and security, often with very little regard for civil liberties. It could mean restrictions on your freedom of movement, freedom of assembly, and even what the press are allowed to report on. It's a sign that the government believes there's a very severe threat to national security, like an actual war, and they're willing to suspend the normal democratic processes to address it. It's a big deal. It's a huge deal. So now, President Yoon claims this was necessary because of these anti-state forces and the threat from North Korea. It's a national emergency to him. But things get a bit murky when we consider the political climate surrounding President Yoon. For starters, his approval ratings were extremely low. I mean, really low, somewhere around 17%. Right. Also, I should note that there is no national emergency. There is no war. To understand this, we need to rewind a bit. So, in April, the opposition party won a landslide victory in the general election, and that essentially made President Yoon a lame duck, meaning his power and influence were significantly diminished. Basically, he's still the president, but he lost his mandate to govern effectively. It's a difficult position for any leader to be in, and to add fuel to the fire, Yoon was already facing several scandals. Allegations of stock manipulation, and even his wife, the First Lady, she was caught accepting luxury goods. Not exactly confidence-inspiring. During all of this, there were attempts to impeach some of his cabinet members and top prosecutors, so that's got to add even more pressure. So the timing of this martial law declaration seems very convenient, I've got to say. All of this raises a lot of questions about his motivations. Was this a genuine attempt to address a national security threat? Or was it a desperate power grab by a president clinging to authority? It almost sounds like where your boss realized they're about to get fired, so they just suddenly try to assert dominance. Did he see martial law as a way to kind of regain control? It's interesting to note that although President Yoon is known for his tough stance on North Korea, He offered no concrete evidence of an immediate threat when declaring martial law. Throughout history, leaders have tried to gain power by resorting to fear-mongering and scapegoating others. Creating an external enemy, whether real or imagined, can be a very effective way to rally support and silence opposition. So, while Yoon pointed the finger at North Korea, the real drama was unfolding right in the heart of South Korean democracy. The parliament building scenes that unfolded that night were a stark reminder of the fragility of democratic institutions, even in a country like South Korea, which has a relatively strong track record. There were heavily armed troops surrounding the parliament building and helicopters landing on the roof and soldiers inside with guns. It was like something out of an action movie, and it was a very chaotic, intense situation. Both sides of the political spectrum were outraged by this declaration, and then all of a sudden, they were all being shut out of their own government. The lawmakers, the MPs, were desperately trying to enter the building to block the declaration. The craziest part is that the president had the troops there already to block them from even entering the building. Some of these lawmakers took extraordinary measures to defend their right to govern. Like they were climbing walls and dodging soldiers just to get into the building. One lawmaker literally confronted a soldier, grabbing his rifle and shouting, aren't you ashamed of yourselves? That takes guts. I would be too scared to do that. It speaks to the courage of those who were determined to uphold democratic principles even in the face of military force. Anyway, they actually managed to get inside. And they, of course, unanimously voted to overturn President Yoon's martial law declaration with 190 of South Korea's 300 National Assembly members present. After the announcement was made, you could hear the people cheering outside the parliament. Once the vote went through, the speaker in the parliament said that the president's martial law declaration was invalid as it was illegal and unconstitutional. They also condemned the armed forces who actually prevented the MPs from entering the parliament following an illegal order. Now, everything is back under control and things are supposed to go back to normal, right? But the damage was already done. This incident had exposed these deep cracks in South Korean society and it raised serious questions about the future of democracy in the country. The opposition party is calling for Yoon's impeachment now, and this may seem like a pretty drastic step, but it's not unprecedented in South Korean politics. 2 presidents have been impeached in the past. Park Geun-hye was impeached and jailed for receiving bribes, and her conservative predecessor Lee Myung-bak was sentenced to 15 years in prison for corruption. Well, they were both pardoned by their successors at the end. So how does the impeachment process actually work in Korea? First, the National Assembly, which is their parliament, has to vote on whether to impeach the president. If 2/3 majority votes are in favor of impeachment, then the president is suspended from office and the case goes to the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court then decides whether to remove the president permanently. So pretty much, the court holds a trial and reviews the evidence presented against the president. This incident, I think, highlights the fragility of democratic institutions, even in countries with strong democratic traditions. We often take these institutions for granted, but as we've seen in South Korea, they can be eroded very quickly if not vigilant. Don't just assume that democracy will always protect itself. We are the citizens, and our responsibility is to engage to hold our leaders accountable and to defend the principles that underpin a free and just society. It's not just about South Korea. We're seeing these similar trends playing out in democracies around the world. You have to think about misinformation that is prevalent in social media that can bring fear and confusion to the general public. We need to be informed and understand how our political system works. And we also need to diversify our sources of information and fact-check what we watch and read. even my video. I did my research and I'm sharing with you what I learned. But please go watch other people's videos, news channels, and read articles from various sources. Lastly, vote. Come on, your vote matters, people. So what do you think about this whole chaos? Most of Korea was asleep as the president made the emergency announcement at 11 p.m. And it was all over before dawn. But the fear and fury from what the president tried to do may last much longer. Where are you watching from, and how important do you think democracy is? Do you live in a democratic country? Thanks for watching.